Now, Rhodes University says that it's not true that two female students were banned for life from the institution for taking part in a protest. Social media reacted with outrage to news that the pair were expelled for taking part in an anti-rape protest last year.
The institution says that they have followed all necessary procedures. They claim that the issues were ventilated in processes involving the High Court, the Supreme Court and the Constitutional Court. However, one of the students, Yolanda Janchi, has labelled the process as unfair. Janchi says that she wasn't even given an opportunity to testify. Rhodes has referred to the students' claims as gross misrepresentation. Well, let's find out from her now and get a sense, or her side of the story at least. Yolanda, thank you very much for joining us on the programme and welcome. It's been a difficult time, a long year for you. Tell us what your initial reaction to the, I suppose, the outcome. They're saying that you haven't been banned for life. They're saying you haven't been expelled. What is the story?
Thank you so much, Peter, for obviously having me on your show. That is the most absurd thing I've heard all day, regarding this entire case. What you call it? Wow, I'm actually quite stunned that Rhodes would say that. As it is, I have a sanction. My sanction has what are they saying? I'm so overwhelmed. This is like false information.
Let's start with
university.
Let's start with the sanction that you believe you've received. Did you receive it in writing? How was it communicated to you, and what was communicated to you?
My sanction is in writing. My sanction is in full effect as it stands. I mean, if they claim that I was not even excluded or suspended, then why is it that my student number does not, register at the university? I am no longer a student of Rhodes University. This came about on the 17th of November, which is about 3 weeks ago or so. Or 4, if I'm not mistaken. And, this was a result of, an tiresome disciplinary hearing that, I had to, sit in for 6 months, from June all the way till, last few days of October. The disciplinary hearing was basically about the fact that, I was a student who was heavily involved in, the RU reference list protest that took place last year. And, I was charged with 4, really crazy charges that they also, claim that are very serious. And I also believe that they're quite serious. Kidnapping, of which is one of them, assault, defamation of character, subordination, and this is obviously in subordination apparently to the Vice Chancellor of the institution, Usize Mabizela.
All right, tell us what happened at the time from your view, because they're saying you did kidnap people. Assault may have even been involved in this. What happened on the day?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure, majority of South Africans that actually read up and followed on the hashtag RU references protest on social media, on TV, on various platforms, they saw footage and a sorry story. What happened on that night was that, after a 3-week awareness campaign that was, based on gender-based violence at the university, under the hashtag Chapter 212, a list on social media entitled RU references, hence, the protests, are known as RU references, with 11 names of men that are and were, past and present students at the university, and at the bottom was written et al. This list obviously, caused a whole lot of commotion on campus. It caused a whole lot of conversation, which, I believe was a moment of breaking the silence in the sense of just the ripeness and just how real rape culture is at the institution. And by rape culture, I'm talking about just the sexual harassments that have taken place, against a majority of female bodies, and rape and assault, like physical assaults. So I'm talking about abuse here. And, this was a campaign. This was a campaign under Chapter 212, not only initiated by Rhodes, it was initiated by Rhodes University as well. And I think Vic might have also embarked on that. But, it blew up a whole lot on our campus because we started off sooner than, the other campuses. And it started off as a poster campaign that was legal, that was endorsed by the SRC. It was led by, an SRC councillor, Naledi Mashishi, whom herself was also, vilified by the university in the same proceedings that I was involved in this year. So then, references happens, campus breaks the silence. People know what these men, apparently have in common, which is, alleged rape, that, these men are alleged rapists or sexual predators of sorts on our campus. And then that night, people took to the streets. I was watching this play out on my phone, like everyone else who was at Rhodes at the time. But women, this was started and initiated by black women on campus who, were also just as angered and tired by, the silencing of the institution, by the violence that, we face every day at that institution. And just the disappointment that, the women have received from just reporting their cases. So ultimately, the protests were about just confronting, some of the men that they could confront on that list that, resided on campus in various residences on the night of 17th April. And, by the time I got to the beginning of the protest, there was possibly about like 60 to 100, students, surrounding one of the alleged rapists on that list. And, people were just going at him. He was already outside of his residence at the time. And phones were out, and people were just going at him, and and it just became a thing where it grew and it grew in numbers. People were trying to confront their rapists. The women who have been actually assaulted by these men were leading some of the leading women, some of the most angered women on that night, and they just wanted to confront their rapists. And most importantly, we wanted the university to take a stance because these cases had been reported. Some of them, nothing has come about. Okay. Women have also been discouraged, and that's the saddening thing.
Were these guys physically manhandled in any way by any of the demonstrators?
Tisa, the university claims, and so obviously one of the men actually claims that he was, and I'll speak specifically for myself because it seems as though that from that night I somehow managed, because the allegations or the charges rather are that I acted myself and 1,500 students at the university acted in common purpose, and we all kidnapped and assaulted these men, and somehow I'm also taking the rap for this. And this was not just this year. This started last year with the interdict, because, you need to remember that the Rhodes got an interdict 3 days after, the RE reference list became a continual protest against rape culture and, gender-based violence at the institution. Then I and two other women became the respondents.
Why were you singled out?
I really have no idea. I was singled out. I mean, the interdict, is another case of its own where, the university relied on affidavits. The university relied on my Facebook posts. Just me being vocal about, gender-based violence and what was happening at the time. Of course, I was communicating what was going on. Of course, I was not going to remain silent. Of course, I was mobilizing and sharing information as to, what is going on at every moment that, RE reference list dropped on that night. So I guess, I became a target in that way.
Do you think you did anything wrong? Do you think you did anything wrong?
In terms of the charges, no, I did not kidnap anyone. Did I assault anyone? I did not assault any man. It's absurd for them to even think that I could kidnap myself alone. Apparently, I did this. I kidnapped grown-as rugby players. I'm just a tiny woman, and I kidnapped these men out of their residence. I dragged them out. And I think also, rather than just also focusing on these charges, I'd like to focus on the fact that I'm now having to plead my case on air. I have to now kind of I did these allegations.
Take us through the process. Take us through the process the university took. And were you able to make representation?
I'm exactly trying to get to that. Here I am, I'm being asked, if it is the case or not, because the university is saying it is the case, but I was not afforded a chance. if the university was quite honest in terms of how this entire process has played out in the past 6 months, I attended all of those hearings, have not spoken, have not even given evidence or testified, yet alone given a chance to cross-examine, the evidence that was brought forward to myself and the co-accused. By the time when it would have been my turn to, give my side of the story, the co-accused, they had just summed up the co-accused, version of events, and, she had given her evidence. And, we had, as legal representatives and as Rhodes' legal defense team and whatnot, everyone sat down and agreed when would the next proceedings take place. The dates that were put on the table and everyone had agreed upon were the 29th and the 30th of November and the 1st of December. That is what I was told. That was what my lawyers had agreed on. That's what everyone involved in these proceedings had agreed upon. Come November, when it's exam season, in like 5 days or so before my first exam, that Rhodes has decided to not stick to the initial agreement that all representations had agreed upon, and that they're going to continue the hearing, and they insist that everyone be at Rhodes University on the 6th, on the 8th, and I think the 9th. It was not the 10th. I'm not the last day. And what I found quite, bothering and just also quite ironic is that these were the specific days that my timetable was set for me to write my exams. So, my legal representatives, which is, SERI, I'm represented by the Socioeconomic Rights Institute of South Africa. They were not available on those days. I mean, this was agreed upon like in October, that at the end of November and into December, the proceedings would continue with all parties there and, with everyone having agreed. At this point, I was getting ready to write my exams and also building up for
unfortunately,
my
we've run out of time. Yolanda, unfortunately, we've run out of time. But just one last thing, I think, if you can clear up as well, is that we believe that there's been a disproportionate sanction, that this accused was found guilty of an offence, but he's received a lesser sanction than yourself.
Yeah, it's not an accused. It's not any man who was on that list, or the reason why the protests may have occurred that night. This is another case that came about this year. A student leader himself, he was found guilty of rape in the beginning of the year for 10 years. He's excluded for 10 years, and he is going to come back at Rhodes University. However, myself, many other women, because it's not just two women. Rhodes has been on a purge of excluding student activists, the women primarily, who've been vocal about, all the injustices that have occurred at the institution. And, my case and, the co-accused has been the worst because, we've been excluded permanently. We've been excluded permanently. And, it's quite ridiculous that somebody who's found guilty for rape, the only case that has actually been successful ever since Ari reference list, and actually ever since, in the longest of time, he gets 10 years and he gets to still come back to the institution, and his transcript, does not reflect what our transcripts will reflect and, subsequently follow us for a very, very long time. And it's just very angering because, again, I was not afforded a fair trial.
Okay. Yolanda, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. I know you've got a lot to say, but time's not on our side. But thanks very much for highlighting that story. And just to let you know that we did invite the university to participate on this program. It says that a media statement that a standing committee has been established to deal with rape and gender violence incidents on campus.